Welcome to Tales by Jin. I'm Jin, and you're listening to the Tales of Lux and Cor Gwyndolyn series. This is Adolescence Part 1, the fourth episode in the series. Sit back, relax, and let yourself be whisked away as we return to the world of Tenebrae to follow Gwyndolyn on her continued adventures in the Dragon Wastes of Cor and beyond. The time had finally come, her first raid, and a long time coming it was. Gwyndolyn's actions during her proving day were nothing short of spectacular, unprecedented. No kobold had ever passed their proving day by amputating a limb from their shaman, and no kobold likely ever would again. But such a grandiose graduation came with a cost. Before, Gwyndolyn of the Shadowscale clan was merely a nuisance, an annoyance, a delinquent to be tolerated. Clan was clan, after all, and even the worst of them was better than any outsider. But now, even being clan held no sway over her clanmates' hearts. Now, she was actively shunned. The reason varied from kobold to kobold. Some reviled her for daring to harm their shaman, who should by all rights be beyond reproach. Some were, naturally, afraid of her. A kobold able to wield the holy judgment of the heavens? And dared turn that power against their betters? No, best avoid that one. Nothing good could come from associating with that one. Avoid eye contact, speak not her name, even to disparage her, give a very wide berth, so flashing, thunderous judgment didn't befall you next. Gwyndolyn who? And then there was a minuscule minority that were in, very, very hushed, awe of her. Of course, they kept that very private, buried so deep in their own psyche, even they were surprised when the thought dared to resurface. They did not want to be the next to face the shaman's wrath. Kieran Jennifer, slayer of the Queen of Cor's brother, did not take losing a limb to a child graciously, and those who were not careful with their words around the shaman paid a hefty price, usually in flesh. All this meant that it was quite a few seasons before a raid party even considered taking Gwyn with them outside of the clan's lands. In order for the elders to grant a kobold party permission to leave on an expedition, the party in question needed at least 3 members. 2 was supremely unlucky, and going solo was a sure way to turn up dead and forgotten. So it was no wonder that the group that reached out to Gwyn was a pair that lost their third in their last raid months ago, and only approached the grayish-blue pariah after exhausting every other option. The 2 of them approached her as she sat in the shadow of a pillar of stone watching the underbelly of the Vale roil with thunderous rumblings over the wastes. The taller of the 2, a clay-orange scaled adult by the name of Alec, cleared his throat. Gwyndolyn? If she heard him, she found the wastes beyond to be far more interesting. See, Uncle, I told you it'd be like this. She's like deaf or something, chirped the younger, silt-yellow one. We're wasting our time. She won't come, and even if she did, do we really want... The thought trailed off as Gwyn's eyes narrowed. Alec cleared his throat again. What my nephew here means, Gwyn. Can I call you Gwyn? No. Right. Gwyndolyn, what my nephew here means to say is, well, we lost his brother last raid, and, well, with just the 2 of us, the elders won't allow us on raids, which means our standing within the clan is falling. Isn't that right, Willem? Willem huffed and kicked at a stone. You're wasting your time. Come now, Willem. Wasn't she a groupmate of yours? Willem rolled his eyes. if constantly being punished off to the side while everyone else actually learned what it means to be a proper kobold is a groupmate. I'm sorry, what Willem means is...
Exactly what he's saying.
Gwyn stood up and regarded the two. Both taller than her, but she could probably snap them in half with a kick each. She'd seen Alec around. He was decent with daggers, but she'd never seen him use any magic. Willem, on the other hand, crushed his Proving Day opponent under a pillar of stone he had summoned, much like the one she had been leaning up against when they had arrived.
Your failed raid was months ago. You couldn't find anyone else to be your third, so you thought you'd be oh so generous and offer Gwyndolyn the Usurper her very first raid? Oh, how kind and magnanimous you must think yourselves, denigrating yourselves to the point of approaching me. Well, why even bother with me? Why not just go as two? What's stopping you?
While Alec visibly balked at the suggestion, Willem rolled his eyes. He was used to hearing such blasphemy from their lessons together in their youth. Willem twirled a claw in the air, and pebbles began to swirl around Gwyn's feet. Look, since my uncle here doesn't want to be straight with you, and you clearly don't want to be bothered, I'll get to the point. If you were actually around for our lessons, you would know kobolds go out in threes minimum. 1 martial adept, 1 magic adept, and 1 scout. Uncle's the martial, I'm the magic, so what does that leave? Gwyn swished her tail low, sending the encircling pebbles scattering.
And there wasn't a single other scout to be had in the entire clan?
There were, but...
But?
Alec coughed and stared intently at the horizon. Willem rolled his eyes. After Uncle here lost my parents, and now my brother, no one wants to raid with him, so the elders told us to take you.
I honestly don't give a steaming shadow beast shit what the elders told you. Especially after what you just told me. Are they trying to get rid of me through your uncle? Fuck that, find someone else.
Believing the conversation to be finished, Gwyn sat back down on the ledge overlooking the wastes. Lightning struck in the distance, and in the corner of her eye she saw Alec flinch. She found it difficult to hide her smirk. But the smirk slipped to a confused frown when Alec, clearing his throat for the umpteenth maddening time, sat next to Gwyn on the ledge. I am ashamed to admit it, but it is as you say. We exhausted our options. We have no choice but you. But... Gwyn could see him visibly tense as he continued. Neither do you. Have a choice, that is. The elders told us to take you for a reason.
Like I said, I don't give a fuck.
They're gonna exile you, Gwynny Gwyn. Willem trilled into the open air, drawing her glowering ire. My nephew speaks the truth. They recognized our position and considered yours, and that was the conclusion they reached. We need you to raid, and it seems you need us to stay part of this clan. It's been a number of seasons since your Proving Day, and you've yet to bring anything of value to the clan. Is what they said, anyway, Alec added when her glower settled on him.
Fine. Let them exile me,
she said, knowing full well that would be a death sentence even for her. It would only be a matter of time before wild shadow beasts made a meal of her or passing travelers near the edge of the wastes killed her on sight. If she didn't starve first. I would love that for you, honestly, said Willem. You'd miss out on seeing your little crystal buddy ever again, though. I bet he'd be so heartbroken to hear that the girl he was too pathetic to beat at her Proving Day was so pathetic herself she got herself exiled instead of bringing something useful to a meet. Then he could see her be all pathetic about him, and they could be pathetic together again. That's right. the meat. Gwyndolyn had forgotten all about it. Part of the reason she was stoutly refusing to take part in clan activities was because the elders, and probably Kieran themselves, were actively keeping her and Chris apart. She had neither seen nor heard from him since Kieran dragged him back to their cave after the Proving Day incident. But if a clan-wide meet were called, everyone would have to attend. The elders, of course, could call one for any event they found significant enough. But any clan member could appeal to the elders for one, given they had compelling and convincing enough cause. And that cause could be anything. Though if it were from a clan member, it tended to be something of dire significance discovered from a raid. It would appear she, regrettably, had found a reason to participate in this system she very much despised.
Fine. I'll be your scout.
Really? In an instant, it appeared seasons of worry fell from Alec's scales as he brightened. That is wonderful news. Willem, we have a third. We still have a chance.
Yeah, before you get too excited.
Gwyn stood and walked away from the cliff until she was shoulder to shoulder with Willem, facing away from the uncle-nephew pair.
It's probably best you don't think of me as part of your group. I'll do what's necessary of me, otherwise I'll do my own thing, and you won't interfere with that. Even out there. Is that understood?
Shaking his head, Willem blew a humored puff of air from his nostrils.
Get yourself killed for all I care. Just do it after we've brought something back worth enough to get us a scout that isn't the biggest failure of kobold kind. Sure. Just one thing, though.
Gwyn stomped down with every ounce of power her thick thighs could muster on the tip of Willem's tail, and clamped her claws around his snout before even the tiniest peep could slip out. She pulled down until his watering eyes were level with hers.
Talk about Chris like that again, and your uncle will be looking for more than just a scout after this.
The dragon wastes of Cor occupied the northwesternmost area of the Kingdom of Cor, curling down south along the outside edge of the kingdom. While within was drained of almost all magic and life, the borders thrived in comparison. Thin, reedy grasses that grew tall and were surprisingly hardy grew along a clear delineation of the waste and the rest of the kingdom beyond. This grass was home to very few save for the grass trolls that adapted to their home in such a way that the only way to tell if the stalks in front of you were grass or troll was to cut a stalk and see if it cut back. And while that was a perfectly good reason for adventurers to avoid the Bordergrass, there was another, more pertinent reason. Bordergrass grew to be around 4 feet tall in the wild. Kobolds, horns inclusive, tended around 3 to 5 feet. Those who wandered blind in the Bordergrass might happen across a kobold lying in wait. And while one was already bad enough, there were always more. Sometimes, with a shadow beast or two, they temporarily tamed with some gloomberries. Messing about in the Bordergrass was generally thought to be a bad idea by the denizens of Cor. But there were always those who pressed their luck in spite, or even because, of the inherent danger. After all, those that died in the grasses left loot, didn't they? And if they retrieved the loot of those fallen before them, and continued beyond, who knew what vast forgotten dragon hordes awaited them on the other side? For some young Corin, that was all the dreamy impetus they needed to attempt a foolhardy venture into the place their grandpappy told ghost stories about when they were wee tots still clinging to their mother's skirts. In their own way, kobolds were very thankful for such constant, persistent foolishness. Gwyndolyn approached the Bordergrass apprehensive. While she had overheard plenty enough about it, seeing it in kobold for the first time was daunting. All she had known was stones, caves, lightning, and magic. and whatever miscellaneous items the raids brought in. Some kobold artisans did craft tools and items from the stuff, but to see it alive, a wall of plants taller than her, shuddering, waving, moving, whispering before her, it was overwhelming. She was glad to be alone right now. Alec and Willem could not be allowed to see her hesitate. She had a reputation to uphold. Right. Gwyndolyn did have a reputation to uphold, which meant to herself as well. She clenched her fists, exhaled through her nostrils, and strode forward into the grass, and immediately hated her decision. Thousands of little fingers were brushing along every part of her body. She shuddered as she involuntarily froze in place among the grass. It wove and bent around her, bowed and tickled. It was alive. It was moving. It was on her, around her, under her, above her. It was everywhere, and all she could know in this very moment. The shuddering stopped as somewhere deep in Gwyn's little kobold heart felt something akin to relief for the first time in a very long time. Her claws relaxed, and she breathed deep. This was different, fascinating, weird, strange, new, not kobold, decidedly not kobold. Suddenly, she wasn't sure why she was so apprehensive before. In the grass was unknown. Unknown breeds fear, but to experience the unknown brings new, brings understanding. There, in the grass she was touched by, Gwyndolyn realized, really deep down in the darkest reaches of her soul, that there was life outside of kobold clans. There was more to life than training for raids, training for regicide, training to train the next generation, training for training's sake. There was a whole new world with wholly different people out there, probably with wholly different lives. A grin crackled at the corners of her mouth. She stepped forward, deeper into the grass. She couldn't see anything ahead, but that didn't matter. She was deep in the new. She wanted more. Grass slapped hollowly at her chest and legs as her pace quickened, jogging, then running, then full-out sprinting, her powerful legs carrying her fast enough to blur the grassy world around her. A laugh burbled up from the back of her throat, tiny and weak at first, but the faster she streaked through the grass, the more thunderous and full-bodied it grew, until she was a blue bolt cackling mad through the brush, right into the back of something solid. Instincts built through years and years of training activated, much to Gwyn's chagrin. Whatever she had barreled into was sent flying ahead. Once she rolled to a slow enough speed, she clawed her way to all fours and skittered off to the side, slightly off from perpendicular of her original path. She stayed low against the dirt, not stone, and engaged her other senses as acutely as her surroundings would allow. Sight was mostly useless beyond a couple feet. Ears were full of the swish-swish of windswept grass-on-grass action, until she focused beyond that to hear a groan further up and well off to her right. Nose was full of grass, figuratively and literally. Couldn't risk cleaning it with a good sneeze, though. That would reveal her position. Gwyn flicked out her tongue. The air tasted grassy.
"What in Cor?"
said a pained voice from the same direction as the groan.
I feel like I was hit by a runaway boulder.
Gwyn stiffened, then wriggled closer to the ground. Whatever noises it was making, she didn't understand. They didn't sound like the random snarls of a beast, though. There seemed to be a rhythm and a cadence to it. Maybe they were words or something. Either way, they weren't words she understood, and if the stories were to be believed, people from outside the waste would be as bad or even worse than a pack of shadow beasts for a kobold.
Elias? Hey, Elias, you still over there? Could you give me a hand? I think whatever hit me threw my back out. Elias?
More words from the thing that Gwyn hid. She almost wanted to creep over and see what it was. This was her first encounter with non-kobold life, after all. Even if she was alone and her support was waiting for her to report back the findings of her scouting, this was an opportunity she couldn't waste. She just had to see. Real quick. Just a peek. Relaxing the slightest bit, Gwyn put one claw forward. Then another. Then another. She froze again, claw hovering just above the dirt. Something was off. She looked left. Grass. She looked right. Grass. She looked forward. Grass. But something was off about this grass. It was growing down, not up. Gwyndolyn, against her better judgment, craned her neck up. A pair of beady black eyes locked with hers. Gwyn wasn't sure who screamed first, or louder, but they both let out piercing shrieks and bolted in opposite directions. She kept going as fast as her thick thighs would carry her, which was considerably fast, even for non-kobold life, until she burst from the bordergrass, tumbled to a halt, then skittered back just far in enough to feel well hidden. Which side of the bordergrass she was on, she had no clue. But she was sure of one thing. Life outside of the clan was more exhilarating than anything she could have imagined. If only everything outside of the clans didn't want them dead. Or did they? She had no idea how long that troll had been staring at her squirming in the dirt. It was embarrassing. But if they had wanted her dead, they had had every opportunity. And somehow, she had come away from the encounter whole and unscathed. A little ashamed of her actions and not noticing someone literally right there, but no worse for wear. At the very least, she had some decent intel for Alec and Willem. First scouting outing success. She could just leave out the part about running from an encounter with her tail between her legs. No one needs to know about that. Not even Chris. Especially not Chris.
So, Scout, find anything useful for the rest of us to act on? Sitting around with our tails up our butts isn't as fun as Christopher makes it look.
Gwyndolyn stood doubled over, paws on knees, panting. Occasionally, sometimes involuntarily, she'd sneeze air through her nostrils to clear it of errant bits of grass. That comment about Chris she filed away for later.
There were trolls in the grass.
That's it? Well then, as out of breath as you are, they're already dead. Damn, would have been nice to have some easy fun sometimes.
No, they're not. They're...
Willem circled around to the front of Gwyn. He bent at the side, tilting his head as he did, so it was nearly upside down as he stared her in the eye.
Wait, you...
Oh.
Oh, that's rich,
he barked, straightening up.
Hey, Uncle, get this. The scout of the generation came across some grass trolls and didn't even kill them. She...
Willem paused, grinning at Gwyn expectantly.
You? Ran! She ran! Hear that, Uncle? She ran like a fucking hatchling, probably pissing her shell the entire way. See, this is what we get for working with an egg tooth. Can't even cover her scouting tracks. Who knows, maybe they followed her back here. At least then I'd get to have a little fun smashing trolls into...
That's enough, Willem, Alec said from a curiously specific distance. So specific it was that when Willem turned and took a step toward him, he matched it. It's her first raid. She's not used to what we do out here.
She sure as Cor isn't. What kind of sloppy scouting did she think?
Gwyn's claws flashed forward but struck nothing. Still panting, she looked at them. They were shaking. The rush of whatever fueled her up to this point was beginning to wear off, and she could feel sluggishness rising in her system. It must have been obvious, because Willem had been smart not to provoke her since they asked her to join them days ago. Now, though, she had run herself ragged in this whole new world outside of their own. It was stupid. Of course he would take advantage of that. Stupid Gwyn. Stupid. Now she had to deal with this jerk while exhausted. Just like everything else this day, it was another situation she had no experience in. Until now, she was always in control or she didn't engage. Now, she was caught mid-shed and could do nothing about it. Nothing but watch and wait for the best opportunity. "Oh, the hatchling still has claws," said Willem, dancing just outside of her reach. "You know, it's funny almost. People are scared of you because of what you did to the shaman. People fear you because you supposedly wield the sacred lightning. But honestly, what have you done since?" He flicked his tail and a pebble shot up and beamed Gwyn in the brow ridge over her left eye. Liquid warmth dribbled down from the sting as she stared at him. She growled. "Oops, did I hit you with my stone magic? It's almost like I actually have the abilities I'm known for. Crazy, right? Isn't that just crazy, Uncle?" "Willem, please. Not yet. We still need her for..." Two massive stone slabs rose up and slammed together inches from the end of Alec's snout. As the rubble fell away, he stood as he was before being interrupted by his nephew, eyes down as always. Except now, his daggers were in hand. "Yeah, I know. Bring something back of value or be exiled. No one else will work with us. I know. Shut up!" Willem jabbed a finger at Alec, and a stone shot off in the same direction. And though there was plenty of time to, Alec didn't raise a dagger to deflect it. The stone impacted him in the ribs, and the area soon began to swell. "Because if you don't shut up, you can join the rest of the family under the rock of people that annoy me." "As for you," Willem said as focus returned to his original target, "he is technically right, which is the most annoying kind of right. So while I'd love to squish you like the rotten egg you are, you still have work to do. Take us to those trolls you found, and I'll show you how a real kobold deals with outsiders." He mimed a kick at Gwyn, and a wave of stone knocked her down and rolled her towards the Bordergrass. "Go on then, get going. We haven't got all day. I'm not keen on getting killed over your cowardice, so hurry up and find them again already before they find us." Bruised in both body and spirit, Gwyn got to her feet and brushed herself off. Touching the wound on her brow ridge showed that the bleeding had already stopped, so it was shallow enough to not worry about. But that was the least of her worries. She growled quietly to herself as she eased her way back into the Bordergrass, flanked by her two raid mates. How much did the elders actually know? Had they suggested this volatile brat and his spineless uncle take her along specifically so those two would kill her in the process? Or were they hoping she'd lose her temper and kill them first? Maybe it wasn't that deep at all. Maybe they'd be happy with either outcome, or even better, they kill each other. No, she wouldn't give them the satisfaction. If killing this blight on the clan was what they wanted, she wouldn't be manipulated so easily, even if right now she really wanted to. And she sure's Vale wasn't about to die. Not before breaking out of this life that her hatching had set before her. Not now that she knew firsthand there was so much more out there that didn't involve killing and training and kobold-on-kobold violence. She couldn't die, not yet. Not before discovering more and sharing this wide new world with Chris. Thank you for listening to this episode of Tales of Lux and Cor, Gwyndolyn. If you liked what you've heard, please be sure to like the video and leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to make sure you're notified when new episodes come out. Thanks for stopping by, and may your cave be ever warm.